listening to The Verge, a thought leadership series by Divergent. I'm your host, Shaillee Juneja. The series is for healthcare leaders and organizations navigating the journey to digital transformation in the ever changing landscape of our healthcare industry. Our goal in the series is to bring to you disruptive success strategies for healthcare organizations, leveraging our experience and having worked with some of industry's top experts and thought leaders. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to invite you to leave us a review and let us know what you think about this episode and the questions that are top of your mind that we would love to have a conversation with you on. With that, I'd like to welcome back my colleague Sarah Brandt back into our conversation on digital ecosystem, building and optimizing digital strategy for your organization. Sarah, welcome back.
Hi, thanks again.
In our last episode, we talked about as we continue to shift to digitized patient experiences, how can we best approach assessing where an organization is in the maturity of digital ecosystem transition to that, and what are some of tangible and practical approaches to assess where you are and identify gaps and opportunities. And one of the things, Sarah, you mentioned was integrating a multidisciplinary governance body, integrating all facets of key stakeholders into the discussion and creating a buy-in is key to the success of this transition. I want to dive in a little bit deeper on that. How have you approached engaging and formulating a multidisciplinary governance when you're looking at formulation or optimization or growth of the digital strategy of the organization?
Yeah, great question. So I'm sure most folks are thinking, oh, you're going to tell me I need to create one more steering committee. I can't take one more meeting on my calendar, which we understand. And I think what's really key, though, as we talked about in our last discussion, is we want to make sure our digital strategy really encompasses the various domains and opportunities our complex healthcare environment has. And so what that means is we really do need to pull in our key leaders to help create the governance and sponsorship really of these initiatives, and make sure that view of the patient, the member, consumer, caregiver really is well represented. So we're not creating specific point solutions or things that don't fit well together, and really make things more effective for everyone.
Mhm.
And so pulling together that team is key. And it's not just always the representation from each area, that certainly is important, but it's also folks who are able to influence. For many organizations, undertaking a comprehensive and robust digital strategy is new. It requires people who are willing to roll up their sleeves, who have an amount of authority to kind of break through some barriers and have some difficult conversations on how things get prioritized or what features need to be included. So not an easy task, certainly acknowledge that, but just creating that group. And one thing I found, once you get a small group together, they often say, oh, my peer, my colleague in this other area of the organization, I think they should be a part of this too. And different than probably some other governance groups is digital is fun. We interact with technology all day in our personal lives. So what I have found more often than not is most folks that are engaged in this and helping to sponsor initiatives really realize the value that comes with it. They want to be a part of the solutions. They want to bring all of this great technology, digital ways of working, new ways of thinking about processes, closing care gaps that they see from their peers in other health systems, or that they see in different contexts, into their day-to-day work.
Absolutely. And, I was reflecting on our conversation in the last episode. What I've also found in keeping these meetings productive, engaging, and, kind of creating the sense that you're actually accomplishing something is, again, what we talked about: break it up into bite-sized pieces. Start by identifying the problem and end with what the tangible next step is and what value can be realized. So folks have a sense of productivity, have a sense of accomplishment coming out of it versus it being one large drown out project, or set of meetings where you're coming in and talking about the big picture, really making it more actionable, more action focused. I have found that that is a key in creating sustained buy-in and almost, turning these participants into champions of the digital strategy. Where, like you said, hey, I should bring in my peer, or let me suggest that. And one more aspect that traditionally we've not done a great job in healthcare, but there is more and more movement towards that, is incorporating the voice of consumer, patient, the ultimate customer in this governance model. So, when we're looking at it, not only looking from operational perspective, technology perspective, data perspective, care team perspective, but really intentionally bringing in the customer focus in there, the customer perspective, whether that translates to mapping out the customer journeys, mapping out what the personalization really means like and translates to technology, translates to data, translates to outcomes, really bringing in that design element in the governance structure, I find is really imperative. Have you come across that?
Yeah, and I think one thing I always like to lend to folks within healthcare is what are we seeing outside of healthcare that works that maybe we need to adjust and adapt to bring in. So voice of the customer and consumer is key, and having a consumer experience or user experience team is something that organizations with defined products do all the time. And I'm seeing that more and more in healthcare, and I really think it helps to shape, especially for these cross functional teams, how do all other great ideas map out in the sense of that member or consumer persona, right? We know if we work with health plans, we may have a individual who's on a Medicare Advantage plan whose persona, needs, desires, wants are very different than a traditional commercial member. And so pulling in that consumer experience team to help flesh out, here's the voice of the customer, really helps us put that customer at the center of what we're doing and continues that great alignment, as we've talked about previously, within our roadmap and initiative. So many folks who may sit on our committees or groups or sponsors can't speak for all the elements that our consumer may need as part of the digital strategy, but together that voice of the customer and those customer journeys can create a really nice unifying picture and vision for what we need to build and how our strategy evolves. And one thing I've really found that's key is having that cohesive vision from a consumer experience perspective allows us to have more engaging, fruitful conversations from the get go with various vendors, technology
Mhm.
partners that we want to bring into the ecosystem. So sometimes we'll get someone who's eager. We all know vendors want to reach out and have us adopt their technology. But before we know it, where do we wind up? Right
Correct.
back with these point solutions that aren't integrated, which is what we started talking about. So, if we can approach from that voice of the customer, we're engaging a solid consumer experience, kind of journey roadmap. When we put that in front of some of our technology sponsors or technology partners, they're able to then respond of what technology they may have that meets that need, which is a much more directed conversation that allows us to continue the momentum on our strategy. I don't know if you have more to add in the sense of what you see with technology partners and engaging them to make this successful.
Absolutely. I think the biggest struggle, and we've seen this time and time again, even when we went through the EMR implementation cycles, we bring in technology vendor and then we build our operations around the technology capability versus it needing to be the other way around. Operations should drive the technology capabilities, not the other way around. So you're absolutely correct. I think as critical as a voice of consumer, voice of the customer is, I think having the technology vendors and making them partners in this journey, not just the delivery partners, but partners and creating buy-in to your strategy, I think is key element to the success. And there are many, many ways that can be done. Engaging them in the stakeholders, engaging them in having them be part of the consumer journey mapping that you're doing so they really can see the end result. And ultimately, the goal is where you are strategic partner with the vendors in helping them even grow their technology capabilities and be part of the shared success. I think that's a huge paradigm shift we are finding in the market. And having learned from our EMR journey, is starting this partnership building early on versus having implemented fragmented technical experiences and then struggling with how do I really build a cohesive experience. Let's shift the paradigm and bring them in early on. And I think that really is a key success, which really makes me want to transition to the next point, which is it really is a different cultural mindset when you get to digital innovation than our atypical, risk averse, waterfall, methodology based technology implementation cycles. The one of the key element in the success of engagement and sustained success in digital transformation is bringing in the concept of agility, leveraging speed and agility to achieve scalability. And before we dive in deep into that, Sarah, I know that is one topic you're very passionate about. I
I
just
am.
wanted to pause and thank our listeners for tuning into Verge, a thought leadership series by Divergent. We at Divergent are your partners on the journey to digital transformation and all the pivots and challenges our industry is going through. To learn more about us, visit us on divergent.com and don't forget to check out the recent article Sarah and I have co authored on best practices to implement digital strategy for your organization. Join us again on our very exciting continued deep dive into the best practice to build and leverage digital ecosystem, where we dive into how to manage the cultural shift in the organization that really supports and encourages the culture of innovation and risk taking and value realization. Until then, have a great day and stay safe.